another week. This video is another kind of impromptu idea because I have other ideas not quite ready. We'll definitely be ready for next week. But in the meantime, I have seen a lot of videos of the nostalgia variety going past on my YouTube about the TV shows of the 90s. Naturally, as with any decade where television existed, there were a lot of TV shows in the 90s. But at least out of the few videos I've watched, they haven't covered these yet that I've seen. These are a few of my favorites from the 90s, generally from the mid to late 90s, and there was a reason for that. Let me explain. Let me take you way back. But it wasn't that far back, because as everyone knows, the 90s were only 10 years ago at most. Now see, here's the thing. When I was a kid, we did not have a TV in the house, like at all. Then when I was about 10, 11, something like that, we got a TV, but we did not get cable or an antenna. We got a video player, and that was the only thing we had a TV for. So I couldn't watch shows. I would go to school and kids would be talking about 90210 or Blossom, and I would know of the show, but I still wouldn't really know what they were talking about. Didn't really help with trying to fit in. Which, I will say, fitting in is overrated, but when you're a teenager or a preteen, it means more. Anyway, it wasn't until I was about 14 or 15 that we finally got cable, and I was able to kind of catch up on shows. So that is why these kind of start. That was around 1993, 1994, right? So these shows are a little bit after that, generally speaking. Okay, enough from me. Let's get right into it. These were some of my either favorite shows or ones that were just quirky, and I remember them fondly for whatever reason. Here you go.
First off is All American Girl. This one aired from September 1994 to March 1995 on ABC. This is purportedly the first American sitcom to center on American Asians, although this isn't true, as Mr. T and Tina, which is a short-lived 5-episode-long show from the 70s starring Noriyuki Patmarita, that had that honor. This show stars comedian Margaret Cho, Clyde Kusatsu, Amy Hill, Jody Long, and B.D. Wong. It started out by focusing on Margaret Cho as the rebellious daughter, Margaret Kim, trying to find the line between her traditional parents and her looser American surroundings. It came under heavy scrutiny from the Korean American community for not only bringing in stereotypical ideas, but also mixing Asian identities. If nothing else, the cast is a mixture of descents, such as Chinese and Japanese, but then again, it was the 90s. Just look at pretty much any other entertainment property with Asian characters then, and you will see that they cast any actor who looked Asian enough, regardless of their actual nationality, something that still happens to this day. The show then tried to refocus on Margaret and her interactions with her white friends, but this didn't work either, and the show was eventually canceled. Personally, I remember this as being my favorite show for at least the first few months it was on. B.D. Wong may have been pigeonholed as the elder brother pressured into a career as a doctor, but he's always a delight, and I still remember the episode where he revealed he had always wanted to sing and perform, and at the end he breaks into a musical number, which was Yankee Doodle Dandy. This show wasn't always subtle, and the happiness on his face stuck with me to this day. On looking it up, this series was also notable for the guest stars, everyone from Quentin Tarantino, who was apparently dating Margaret Cho at the time, Ming-Na Wen, Oprah Winfrey, Ashley Johnson of Growing Pains and etc. fame, and then unknowns Daniel Day Kim and Jack Black. You can catch at least a couple of episodes here on YouTube, but the entire show is also to be had on Internet Archive. Early Edition, September 1996 to May 2000. This starred Kyle Chandler, Fisher Stevens, and Shanicia Davis-Williams. Recurring guest actors included Christy Swanson and William Devane. and one-time episode actors included Cynthia Nixon, Polly Perrette, and Louis Gossett Jr. There was even a crossover with Chicago Hope in Season 2 that not just set there, early edition was filmed entirely in Chicago and its environs. The main idea of the show was Chandler's receipt of his daily newspaper delivery every morning. However, one morning and every successive morning thereafter, he begins to receive the next morning's paper, giving him the news for the rest of the day that is yet to come. It's a glimpse of the future. The news being what it is, he nearly always finds something bad that happens, and he decides that his purpose is to try to prevent that something bad, and thereby help humanity. Although the show's creators claim they made up the idea out of whole cloth, the conceit is not entirely new, being the basis of a 1944 film titled It Happened Tomorrow, starring Dick Powell and Linda Darnell, which I actually own this film, but I've never gotten around to watching it. I did hear a Lux Theater, Radio Theater of the Air, or whatever it's called, adaptation, so I know the plot. It's close. Not completely close, but it's close. I remember the show fondly, being partial to stories of time manipulation, and also the power to effect positive change. And the interplay between Chandler's earnestness, Davis Williams' grounded kindness, and Fisher's patented vulnerable snarkiness made for a winning combination. Unfortunately, the show never cracked above the top 40, so it was frankly amazing it lasted as long as it did, and it was canceled after 4 seasons. Also a show that is inexplicably hard to find streaming, as so many of these are. This can still be found on DVD or in its entirety on Internet Archive. Next up, MANTIS. This aired from August 1994 to March 1995. It starred Carl Lumbly, Roger Rees, Christopher Garton, and Galen Gord. Please excuse my pronunciation if I'm getting any of these wrong, I'm sure I am. Guest actors included Gary Graham, Jerry Wasserman, and Blue Mancuna. A wealthy scientist is shot and paralyzed from the waist down. He creates a super suit that not only enables him to walk, but gives him awesome strength, speed, and the ability to shoot darts out of his wrists. He becomes a masked vigilante with a flying car and a submarine. This would be pretty standard fare, except for the time it's not, because it features a black man in the title role. In fact, the pilot had a good amount of roles for people of color, most of which changed for the rest of the series. When the series began to flounder, the storylines began to get more fantastical, featuring anything from time travel to parallel universes, and you know a show is in trouble when they do all this in the first season. It even ends somewhat definitively with 2 of the lead characters, including the hero, getting killed off after battling an invisible dinosaur, which is the way I want to go, and the MANTIS program being sealed. This one wasn't an absolute top favorite for me, but I did enjoy it and I remember it fondly. Carl Lumbly is forever MANTIS for me. Space, Above and Beyond. This one aired from 1995 to 1996 and was canceled after 1 season. It featured Morgan Weiser, Kristen Cloak, Rodney Rowland, who I remember as they were really trying to sell him as the hot one, Joel De La Fuente, Lonnie Chapman, and James Morrison as the older wise one. The show was set in the future. It was a serious look at the U.S. Marine Corps battling aliens in space, above and beyond. The plot was further complicated with the subplot of silicates, which were androids that looked human, and in vitros that were genetically modified humans bred specifically to battle these silicates. Like many modern sci-fi shows, this one attempted to dissect big topics such as ethics and science, and the military-industrial complex. In fact, there were so many ideas in the show, both big and small, that I really did never quite understand what was going on. It clearly had a good budget, though, because it looked great with really darn good effects for that time, particularly for a television series. Good effects are never enough to hold my interest on their own, but the cast also did a great job with acting and working together as a unit, and the direction was generally solid. So I could always feel, if nothing else, that there was a good story, and so I kept on trying. I do think that possibly one issue with the show is that it was so serious. It's wartime, and war is heck, but humans are human, and one thing that our brains need as a respite, if we can possibly get it. To the best of my recollection, we didn't see enough of the soldiers' joking camaraderie and downtimes and such like that. And I think that's one thing that made the show suffer. But I'd have to check it out again to be sure, and you can too, because some kind soul uploaded the show to YouTube in high quality, no less. Strange Luck aired from 1995 to 1996, starring D.B. Sweeney, the Deebs, Pamela Gidley, Cynthia Martels, and Frances Fisher. I remember always being struck by the fact that 3 out of the 4 featured stars were women. This one was about a man named Chance, because of course he is, who has a tendency to be on the scene when bad or odd things happen. Originally a lead into The X-Files, it was a quirky little drama that has been compared to the show Erie, Indiana, which I cannot verify, having never seen the latter. I do remember I loved this one, and especially Frances Fisher, who is fantastic in anything. A lot of the episodes can be found here on YouTube or on Dailymotion. Teen Angel aired from September 1997 to February 1998. This starred Corbin Allred and Mike Damas. I remember this one as briefly being part of a lineup on ABC TGIF. Sabrina the Teenage Witch was a big hit, and ABC moved to capitalize on fluffy sitcom takes on the fantasy/supernatural, with Teen Angel and You Wish, which I think was about a genie, I never watched that one, helping to fill out a time block. And this show is possibly the strangest, most fluffy take about something serious, as follows. Steve and Marty are teenage boys and best buds. Their friendship takes a turn when Marty eats a 6-month-old cheeseburger on a dare and dies. He then comes back to hang out with Steve and guide him through life as his guardian angel. So, yeah, okay. 80s and 90s television can be summed up generally as, let's throw things at the wall and see what sticks. I didn't watch all of this one, and I can't remember just how good or bad it was, but I am thinking that possibly its concept was too difficult for viewers to get past. Like, hey, your best friend's dead, time for some wacky adventures. That might not have flown as well as the show's creators had thought it might. You can find episodes here on YouTube, so go ahead and judge for yourself if you have a mind to. Temporarily Yours. This is possibly, I've lost track, the shortest lived show on the list, running for only 6 episodes in 1997. It stars Debbie Mazar, Joanna Gleason, and Seth Green. Debbie Mazar is a young woman who happens onto a great, impossible, deal on a New York City apartment, and she lies about being an absolute fixture at a temp agency as her work reference. It's TV land, I don't know. Then she actually has to go to the temp agency and work various jobs, many of which are rather peculiar, owing to her not quite hitting it off with the agency's owner. This is another heck of a concept to throw against the wall, and this one did not stick. Critics said the only thing that worked was the cast, which sounds about right to my recollection. I personally, although I remember feeling like the show had potential, I also didn't think that Mazar was in the right vehicle for her particular defined charms. I'm not actually sure if you can find the whole thing, but at least the first episode is here on YouTube. The Pretender. Unlike the last few, this one hung on for a few seasons, 4 to be exact, from the years 1996 to 2000. This stars Michael T. Weiss, Andrea Parker as Miss Parker, Patrick Baucow, Jamie Denton, and John Grease. I think I've always said it's Grease. But he is Brutes, and he will always be Brutes to me. This was a drama about The Center, a secretive operation that runs the Pretender program, which abducted, I think, gifted children and raised them to adulthood, nurturing and expanding their talents to use them for their own nefarious purposes. One of these now-grown pretenders, Jared, manages to escape and uses his pretender talents to blend in with the population, while helping those in need, evading the pursuing agents, and attempting to find out who he really is. Yes, it's a stretch of the imagination to buy. Michael T. Weiss was fine in the role, but not so much of an actor that I really believed he could blend in as well as all that. But what really worked for this one was its expansion of backstory, even if by the end it did it so much that there was really no way to satisfactorily resolve everything. Jared's brother, Miss Parker's mother, etc., etc. Even so, it did it well enough to stretch things out to 4 seasons, 2 TV movies, and both a novel and a comic book series. I loved and I looked forward to this one as well, and even to have the first season on DVD. I guess the first episode is on Prime? But like so many others on this list, you can find the show here uploaded to YouTube. 2 Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. This ran from 1998 to 2001 and was eventually rebranded as the infinitely less interesting title, 2 Guys and a Girl. With Trailer Howard, of later seasons of Monk fame, Richard Ruccolo, Suzanne Cryer, then little-known actor Nathan Fillion, and fellow, then little-known actor named Ryan Reynolds. The series followed a couple of young 20-something fellows in a big city apartment over the titular pizza place. It was the odd couple of uptight Ruccolo and slacker Reynolds, who's getting a start on the snarky persona that has served him so well for over 25 years. Howard lives in the apartment over them, and so there are constant interactions between the 3, as well as first season episodes concerning regulars of the pizza place, including the charming David Ogden Stiers. When this started, I thought it was the funniest thing on television. After a couple of years, particularly with my heading to college and being too busy to keep up with it, the bloom was off the rose, and I missed the end of the show, but I do remember the show generally with nostalgic fondness. Again, you can find some of the episodes on YouTube. VR5, or is it VR.5? Ran from March to May of 1995, 13 episodes total, although only 10 were aired. This starred Laurie Singer, Michael Easton, Will Patton, a pre-Buffy Anthony Head, and David McCallum. Okay, so a computer scientist fellow who was working on virtual reality died in a car accident when his daughter was young. In the nowadays, being 1995, she discovers by accident that she has the ability to enter a certain form of virtual reality, where her actions affect the actual world. Again, this was the 90s after all, when pretty much anything computer-related equated to magic. I was intrigued by this unusual show, but it was another where I had trouble figuring out what was going on. This may be exacerbated by the fact that there were sometimes continuity issues on purpose, as that would be a clue to the viewer that something was up and you needed to keep watching to see what was going on. Perhaps this was too much for other viewers, leading to the show's eventual cancellation, but then it also did have a tough time slot, and the effects were very costly. So, as ever, you can find certain of these episodes on YouTube. And last but not least, if you've been paying attention, these have been in alphabetical order so far, but this was one I realized I had left off while I was compiling the list. So, one extra, Pearl. 1 season, 1996 to 1997. Arguably one of the most interesting casts ever, starring Rhea Perlman, Carol Kane, Lucy Liu, Kevin Corrigan, Dash Mihawk, and Malcolm McDowell. So, Pearl is a working-class widow who decides to pursue a higher education and gets accepted to a fancy university night course. She is torn between her family, who believes she is trying to become fancy, and her professor, who also thinks she is trying to be too big for her britches. But she does make friends with her quirky, it is a sitcom, everyone is quirky, fellow students, including Lucy Liu, whose character can be uptight due to pressures on herself, which does seem rather an Asian stereotype, I think possibly from my limited white perspective. I really like this show too, and it didn't seem like it ever got a fair shake. Judge for yourself. You can find episodes on YouTube and on Internet Archive.
Well, there you go. That's my list. Have you seen any of those shows? Do you remember them at all? Or are they completely new to you? If so, I hope that you do check some of them out. I have not seen them since the 90s, so be gentle with criticism of my recommendations. But after going through this list, it's definitely sparked my re-interest, so I'll probably be going on and checking them out on YouTube or the archive or wherever they may be available. Or, as I said, on the DVD. Maybe I'll go watch it right now. Until next week, watch more movies and TV shows, and read more books, and hang in there. Really, take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you next week. Bye.